Well, y'all, welcome back to the garden. It is currently a wreck as the geothermal is being installed. It is Monday afternoon or Monday evening, really, and the sun is setting, and I didn't get to shoot any video this past weekend because I was super busy getting things wrapped up for this season, at least all of the major things I want to do. There's still going to be stuff I'm going to do, but the temperature's going to be dropping and we're losing light at the end of the day. And when the time changes, I'll have almost no time after work. So I'm on my last couple of weekends where I can really just like commit and get some things done. But this is currently what I'm dealing with here. So they trenched today. They've been working on the geothermal for a few days now. I guess that started last week. And they drilled the wells last week, and the actual company we contracted with for the install worked on the inside. So it's two separate companies. One does the outside installation and one does the inside, and the wells are back here. Actually, you can see all of the gravel that came out of our subsurface here and the things that the water or the substance will be running through that connects to the furnace system inside. So we have 6 total wells on the property right here for the geothermal, and it will follow this trench, which is supposed to be 4 foot, at least 4 foot deep. I think it's much deeper in some areas, which is good. So we'll have plenty of protection from the frost cycle here, the freeze cycle below the ground. But it is a mess, and I'm ready for it to be over already. One thing that I worked on this weekend, I got all the grass cut for the last time for the season, which was a big deal, and got that all wrapped up. But I also went ahead and mulched the garden beds next to the pool area or the back patio. And it actually looks pretty nice, I think. Very natural looking. I need to come through and probably blow off the stone and stuff, or I might just leave it till spring. But I'm going to come through and still wrap this tree, I think, with lights, and maybe put some other little lights out here. I don't know, just for some nice interest throughout the whole year. So these would stay up all season, just provide a little light in the backyard. I did mulch all the way under here as well, and this bed, which also looks pretty good, I think. We'll see how everything comes back in the spring. Everything, we had our first, I think, kind of harder frost last night. So some things are looking a little weary that would typically be looking a little better, have a little leaf damage. And then I come around and I cleaned up the pool area and tucked all of my boxwoods in containers and hydrangeas over here in the corner where I can keep them watered, but they're also a little protected by the shelter of the house and the brick that will provide a little radiant heat, hopefully, as the sun heats up the brick in winter, to provide those boxwoods a little more protection. I've not had issues with Green Mountains and containers. They seem to be pretty, they're hardy. I think they're one of the hardiest boxwood there are. Other boxwoods aren't quite as hardy, potentially, so I have not tried any other boxwoods in containers, although I know people do it all the time. I just don't have experience with any varieties besides Green Mountain. So I did go ahead and purchase like the bed edger, bed maker device, and that will be arriving probably the first week of November. It'll take a little while to get here. I knew I was going to need it, and to save me time, it was just the best thing that I could get at this moment. Hold on while I jump over this ditch. That will allow me to finish up a lot of other projects this fall before it gets too terribly cold, and I'm going to go ahead and edge a lot of beds and use up as much mulch or chips that I have in the backyard that I can, so I can request another chip drop over winter. So I did have a viewer in the last video I posted showing where I planted this Winecraft Black Smoke Bush inform me that Proven Winners has changed their sizing on the Winecraft Black Smoke Bush. Apparently it's now 8 to 10 foot tall and wide, so I may have to relocate this. I told you I had one in the last garden and it grew really slow. So it may depend on the climate or the area of the country you're in. Mine was no bigger than 3 foot tall and wide after 3 years, but I saw someone say theirs was like 8 foot tall after just a couple. That's not the first time that's happened to me on a plant that I've mentioned on this channel. I planted a lot of things that since I started my YouTube channel, the sizing has been changed on them. So 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 used to say they were only going to be about 1 to 2 foot tall and wide, and now I think the sizing is estimate 3 to 4 foot tall and wide, and Minecraft Black is also gotten bigger as well. So that's definitely too big for this spot if it truly gets the 8 to 10 foot tall and wide. They can be size controlled slightly by pruning on them, but they, I think, grow a lot per season, kind of like a blackleaf elderberry. So it may, I'm going to leave it, I think, right here. We'll see how it acts for the next couple years. If it starts getting too big, we will relocate it. For now, I'm going to leave it where it's at because I think it'll be a nice color contrast here in this bed. So with the edger, I'm going to come through and edge this bed just like it is pretty much now. I may come out slightly to the side and then completely mulch this area in and tighten it up. And then in spring, I will come when I'm able to get more of my actual mulch that I regularly use, this type, extend the bed to the driveway here in the swoop. But like I mentioned in a previous video, the place I get my mulch regularly in bulk, this was the last amount they had for the year, and they won't be getting any more till spring, so I don't have much left over, and I still have to finish the beds along the side of the house here, which will be also another priority over the coming weeks to button that up. It won't need a whole lot of mulch, and I should have enough to finish that project, I think, because the beds aren't actually that wide, but there's still a few things that I want to come through and do before I actually put down mulch, including pruning some of these items back, the yews and the boxwoods, before I bring in mulch. Don't want to litter up the mulch best I can. On Saturday, I got planted probably between 800 to 1,000 bulbs. Now, some of those were crocus that are relatively small, as you know, but most of them, majority of them, were daffodils. I planted maybe 25 tulips. I'm not a huge tulip person because they just don't return well. And I know a lot of people have commented on my channel before, say they plant them and then they just pull them up in the spring. That is good for you if you can do that. If you're a gardener that has heavy clay soil, nothing just pulls up, especially bulbs. They'll break off at the ground and then they'll continue to come back year after year until they just fizzle out, or they'll just be gross looking foliage in the spring, or you have to dig them. And I'm not interested in planting things every fall that I have to dig up the next spring. So daffodils will perennialize around here and come back year after year. Tulips and this soil, new soil that I have, may be more easy to pull up. In my last garden, there was no way you were getting anything out of the ground by pulling it like a tulip. But we'll talk a little bit about discount plants briefly, because now is the perfect time to look for things to plant, including I picked up this mugo pine from Lowe's 2 days ago. It was 50% off. I have been eyeballing it for months now, and no one's wanted this little guy. And I've been waiting until they come to set up the Christmas trees outside, because then they want to get rid of all their plants and everything. All the shrubs were discounted 50%, and this is the only other thing that I picked up. I wanted another evergreen here. I was originally going to put the mugo pine here on the corner before I found this lovely weeping spruce here, but I think it'll be nice right there too. Mugo pine can be pruned on a little bit to stay relatively small, but they grow extremely slow, which is nice. So it'll just be kind of a blob here, and I can fill it and surround it with perennials. But I'm trying to tuck lots of interesting little evergreens in the garden so we have lots of interest over winter, and it's not just devoid of all interest during our really long cold seasons here. So let's discuss a little more discount plants in general and where to score deals. So for me, when I was getting my garden started 5 or more years ago at the last home, I was constantly looking on Facebook Marketplace. Oftentimes you'll find potentially free shrubs on there. Boxwoods is kind of a popular one sometimes that people will dig up and just don't want. And boxwoods of that type size is expensive, and they tend to transplant pretty well. I'm not saying that every one of them that you get is going to survive, but oftentimes some people will be like, you come dig it, you can have it. And I've seen that for trees as well. So Facebook Marketplace is a really good one. I got a bunch of my hostas from the last garden from starts from a woman locally, not so locally I guess, but she digs them every year and sells them on Facebook Marketplace. So there are a lot of homeowners or gardeners who divide their perennials every spring or every fall that you can get divides from on Facebook Marketplace. I think I paid $3 a divide at that time, and within just a couple years those are huge, big, mature plants. You can also just find, sometimes like people will have home nursery type things where they grow plants on, or smaller nurseries will advertise their plants on Facebook Marketplace too, I've seen. So Facebook Marketplace is a great place for the gardener. I have always mentioned on my channel having a Costco or Sam's Club membership. I have both because Costco, until recently, Costco did not have a great selection of live shrub plants. Our local Costco has kind of picked up the game and done much better in that department over the past several years. The Sam's Club that we go to has been kind of the opposite. They used to have more shrubs available in the spring. Nothing too fancy, but like boxwoods, maybe some hydrangeas, azaleas, that type thing. When COVID came through and people weren't out and about, they kind of stopped bringing those in for some reason. They still get like fruit trees and stuff every now and then, or like annual tomato plants that you can purchase there. But most often, recently I found myself purchasing things from Costco. You can also get bulbs at Costco, and so a lot of the bulbs I bought this year came from Costco. But also, interestingly enough, like search for Facebook groups that are local to you. There may be other gardeners willing to trade plants that you might have in your garden, or if you're getting a garden established, there might be gardeners who are willing to give away stuff that they no longer need. So some of my bulbs came from Costco this year. I didn't place a bulb order because we were moving, and typically I would place that order in July. But Costco has a really good selection from Longfield. Both in the spring for perennials and in the fall for bulbs. And if you're local, there's an outlet store called Fisher Park Outlet south between Cincinnati and Dayton that sometimes randomly has plant supplies in. If you follow them on Facebook, they'll be posting when they get those things in. They had quite a number of bulbs, and I went and purchased a bunch of those a couple weeks ago. And as I always tell everyone, shop at your local garden centers. Locally, Grandma's Gardens has like 15% off, or maybe 50% off their perennials for the season. They just want to get rid of what they have left over before winter comes. And you'll find that at a lot of other garden centers as well. I do know where I'm from, you may not have a local garden center, so I wanted to provide you some information on other places to find discount plants, because back where I'm from, there's not really a garden center that provides much more than annuals. So you can't really find those shrubs or perennials that you may be looking for in smaller towns. I'm lucky enough to live in a location now where there's an abundance of garden centers that offer all sorts of things, as well as a higher population where you could grab items from, like Facebook Marketplace, for instance. Facebook Marketplace is not only limited to plants. You can also find some really good garden equipment and statuary or benches for your garden on there. I purchased the concrete bench that was in my last garden, and then I brought to this home from Facebook Marketplace for $100. And that was a very expensive Italian stone-made bench that costs close to probably $1,500 original. So you can find some really great deals on there if you look hard enough and just wait it out. You'll also find at the big box stores like Home Depot and Lowe's, typically you'll find one of them that does not take very good care of their plants. Here, our local Home Depot does a horrible job taking care of their plants, and you'll often find them having sales for all their shrubs 50% off because they just do not water them. A tip to anyone who might work at that Home Depot, maybe consider adding some shade cloth over the garden center area. That would help immensely because those shrubs are always so burnt. But also during times where we have extreme heat, you'll find that they just can't keep them watered enough at the big box stores potentially, and then the plants will be stressed and you can get them on discount. After the first frost, you'll oftentimes find things on discount, or in the spring if the big box stores get a little antsy and put out their shrubs and perennials before they're supposed to, and they get hit by a late frost. You could also find some things that will be perfectly fine. They've been hit by a frost. Oftentimes those perennial and shrub items will be okay, but sometimes they were forced and they're a little ahead of the things in the ground, so they could get damaged by a late frost. And then you can buy them and take them home and get them situated in your garden, give them lots of love, and they will come right back for you the same season. So next steps for me, I'm hoping this project gets wrapped up tomorrow and they fill in this trench and it looks completely different from when I get home from work. And then I can start digging the extra tier into this garden bed in front of me that I showed you in the last video. And moving along. I have a vision for this space that I'm not quite ready to share just because I still got to flesh out some details. But this is going to change, I think, over the next several years of how this area is going to look. We're going to reroute the access to the barn and design some more beds in this space so it looks a little more beautiful. Hide the barn a little bit from the driveway, but still provide sufficient access to everything back there, and hopefully provide some privacy for this way when the corn is cut down in the fall or when they're growing soybeans, which will probably be next year. Thank you guys for joining me on this video, and remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care. Bye.